The sound of my mother's china hitting the hardwood floor echoed through the house. "This is our home," she screamed, her face red with rage. "We're your parents. You can't throw us out." I remained seated at the dining table, calmly sipping my coffee while watching the scene unfold. At 35, I'd spent the last decade of my life supporting my parents, paying their bills, and providing them with a roof over their heads. Yet here they were, trying to claim ownership of everything I'd worked for. My name is Alexander Foster, and this story begins 10 years ago when my parents lost everything in what they claimed was a bad investment. Being the dutiful son with a successful career in architectural engineering, I stepped in to help. I bought this beautiful Victorian house, moved them in with me, and even renovated it to their tastes. "You ungrateful child." My father joined in, his voice thundering through the dining room. "After everything we've done for you." I pulled out a folder from my briefcase. "Everything you've done for me," I repeated softly. "Let's talk about that." "We raised you," Mom interjected, grabbing another piece of china threateningly. "Put the plate down, Mom," I said firmly. "That set costs more than your monthly Social Security check." She froze, plate still in hand. My father stepped forward, attempting to use his height to intimidate me, a tactic that had worked when I was younger, but now seemed almost comical. "Don't you dare speak to your mother that way," he growled. I opened the folder and started laying out documents on the table. "Let's review the last 10 years, shall we? When you lost your house, who bought this one? When you couldn't pay your medical bills, who covered them? When you needed a new car, who provided it? That's what family does," Mom shouted, finally setting down the plate. "Family?" I laughed without humor. "Is that what you call taking advantage of your child for a decade while contributing nothing? Is that what you call trying to claim ownership of a house you haven't paid a single penny toward?" The catalyst for this confrontation had occurred earlier that day when I overheard them on the phone with my aunt, bragging about their beautiful Victorian home and how they were planning to sell it to fund their retirement. They hadn't known I was home early from work. "We're your parents," Dad said, his voice dropping to a dangerous low. "This is our home by right. You owe us everything you have." I pulled out the property deed and laid it on top of the pile. "Actually, let's talk about rights. This house, purchased by me. The renovations, paid for by me. The utilities, property taxes, insurance, all me." My mother's face contorted. "We let you live here with us." "Let me?" I stood up slowly. "You let me live in my house." I reached for another document, a spreadsheet I'd been maintaining for years. "In the past decade, I've spent $687,000 on this house and your living expenses. That includes the down payment, mortgage payments, your medical bills, car payments, credit card debt I paid off, and daily expenses." They stared at the numbers, momentarily silenced. "You know what hurts the most?" I continued. "Not the money, not the sacrifice of my own dreams to support you. It's that you've never once shown gratitude. Instead, you've criticized my choices, interfered with my relationships, and now you're trying to steal my property." "We're not stealing anything," Dad protested. "We're your parents. Everything you have belongs to the family." I pulled out one final document, a notice I had prepared by my lawyer. "No, it doesn't. And here's proof of ownership, along with a formal notice giving you 60 days to either start paying market rate rent or find alternative accommodation." The color drained from both their faces. "You wouldn't dare," Mom whispered. "I would and I am," I replied. "I've already spoken to Aunt Sarah. She's willing to rent you her guest house at a reasonable rate, or you can stay here and pay $2,800 monthly rent starting next month." "We can't afford that," Dad exploded. "I know," I said quietly, "just like you couldn't afford anything else for the past 10 years. The difference is, I'm done enabling this behavior." Mom sank into a chair, tears starting to fall. "How can you do this to us? We're your parents." "Yes, you are. And as my parents, you should have taught me about responsibility, gratitude, and respect. Instead, you taught me that no good deed goes unpunished and that family can be the first to take advantage of you." I gathered the documents back into my folder, leaving only the formal notice on the table. "You have 60 days to decide. Stay and pay rent, move to Aunt Sarah's, or figure out another solution. But your days of taking advantage of me are over." As I walked toward my home office, I heard my mother's sobs and my father's angry muttering. Part of me felt guilty. They were still my parents after all. but a larger part felt relieved. 10 years of pent-up frustration and resentment were finally being addressed. I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop, pulling up my emails. There was one from my lawyer confirming everything was in order, and another from Aunt Sarah expressing her support for my decision. She'd witnessed their behavior over the years and had been urging me to take action. Now came the hard part, standing firm in my decision despite the emotional manipulation that was sure to follow. But as I looked at the property deed bearing my name, I knew I was doing the right thing. Sometimes love means setting boundaries, even with family. Especially with family. The next 2 weeks were psychological warfare. My parents cycled through every manipulation tactic in their arsenal. Guilt tripping, silent treatment, fake health scares, and finally, bringing in the extended family. I was working in my home office when the doorbell rang. Opening the door, I found my Uncle Mike, Aunt Patricia, and 3 of my cousins standing there with concerned expressions. "Alex, we need to talk about what you're doing to your parents," Uncle Mike said, trying to push past me into the house. I blocked the entrance. "No, what we need to talk about is why you're interfering in something that doesn't concern you." "Doesn't concern us." Aunt Patricia's voice rose. "Their family. Your mother hasn't stopped crying for days." I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, and showed them my account. "See this? I've spent nearly $700,000 supporting them. How much have any of you contributed?" The silence was deafening. "That's what I thought," I said. "When they lost everything, none of you stepped up. When they needed medical care, you were mysteriously unavailable. But now that I'm setting boundaries, suddenly you're all family advocates." My cousin Tom, always the reasonable one, spoke up. "Alex, we understand you've done a lot, but they're getting older. Where will they go?" "They have options," I replied. "They can stay here and pay rent or move to Aunt Sarah's guest house. I'm not throwing them onto the street. They can't afford rent." Aunt Patricia protested. "Funny how that's my problem and not yours," I responded. "Would you like to contribute to their rent? Or maybe offer them your spare room?" More silence. That evening, after the unwanted family intervention, I found my mother in the kitchen, making my favorite lasagna, another manipulation tactic. "I thought you weren't speaking to me," I said, leaning against the doorframe. "I'm still your mother," she sniffed, "even if you've forgotten what that means." I walked to the fridge and pulled out a thick envelope. "Speaking of forgetting things, remember when I asked to borrow $5,000 for college? You and Dad said you couldn't help because you needed a luxury cruise instead." She stiffened. "Or how about when I got that scholarship and you told everyone you paid for my education? Or when I got my first job and you immediately asked me to buy you a new car?" "That was different," she whispered. "We're your parents. You're supposed to take care of us." "No," I said firmly. "You were supposed to take care of me, prepare me for life, not treat me like your personal ATM." The lasagna lay forgotten as she turned to face me. "We gave you life. We raised you. And I've repaid that debt 10 times over," I replied. "But it's never enough, is it? You'll keep taking until there's nothing left." My father chose that moment to enter the kitchen. "Still trying to justify your cruelty," he spat. I pulled out another document. This one was different from the others. "Remember the investment that supposedly ruined you? I hired a private investigator." Their faces paled. "Turns out there was no bad investment. You spent your retirement fund on luxury items, cruises, and gambling. You lied to me, used me, and now you're trying to steal my house." We were going to pay you back," Mom stammered. "With what money?" I asked. "The money from selling my house?" Dad slumped into a chair, suddenly looking every bit his age. "What do you want from us?" "I want you to take responsibility for once in your lives," I said. "I want you to acknowledge what you've done and make a real plan for your future that doesn't involve taking advantage of me." "And if we don't?" Mom challenged, but her voice wavered. I pulled out one final document. "Then I'll share these findings with the entire family. Everyone will know the truth about the bad investment, including how you've been secretly selling the antiques I bought for the house on eBay." "Yes, I knew about that too." The investigator had been thorough. "You wouldn't," she gasped. "Try me," I replied. "You have 45 days left to decide. Choose wisely." As I left the kitchen, I heard my father's broken whisper to my mother. "Maybe we went too far." In my office, I looked at the family photo on my desk, taken years ago when I still believed in their love being unconditional. Now I understood that their love came with a hefty price tag, one I was no longer willing to pay. My phone buzzed with a text from Aunt Sarah. "Stay strong, nephew. Sometimes the hardest lessons are the most necessary ones." She was right. This wasn't just about money or property. It was about breaking a cycle of emotional and financial abuse that had gone on far too long. The smell of lasagna wafted up from the kitchen, but for the first time, its aroma brought no comfort. Like my parents' love, it was just another tool of manipulation, and I was finally immune to its effects. As the deadline approached, a remarkable transformation began to unfold. It started with small changes: my father quietly cleaning the garage, my mother actually doing her own laundry instead of waiting for me to handle it. But the real breakthrough came on day 40. I was reviewing blueprints for a new project when my parents knocked on my office door. They looked different, humbled, perhaps even ashamed. "Can we talk?" my father asked, his usual commanding tone absent. I gestured to the chairs across from my desk. They sat down, and for a moment, nobody spoke. "We've been doing a lot of thinking," my mother began, clutching an envelope. "And we found these." She handed me the envelope. Inside were old photographs. Me at graduation, standing alone while they were on another cruise. My first architecture award ceremony, which they'd skipped for a casino weekend. The day I bought this house, where they'd smile for photos, then immediately started redecorating without asking. "We were terrible parents," my father said quietly, "not just recently, but for a long time." I remained silent, waiting. "We've called Aunt Sarah," my mother continued. "We're going to take her up on the guest house offer. She's charging us $800 a month, which we can manage with our Social Security if we're careful. And we started selling our personal items," my father added. "The golf clubs, your mother's designer bags, my Rolex. We want to pay you back, even if it takes years." I leaned back in my chair, studying them. "What brought this on?" "Your cousin Tom showed us something," my mother said. "He calculated how much we'd taken from you over the years, including compound interest. When we saw the number," she trailed off, tears forming. "Over $1 million, my father finished. When you factor in the house value, the renovations, the medical bills, everything. We've stolen your future." For the first time in years, I saw genuine remorse in their eyes. "We also called the financial advisor," my mother added. "She's helping us create a budget and retirement plan that doesn't involve taking advantage of you." I picked up one of the photographs, my college graduation. Do you know what hurt the most? Not the money. It was standing alone at every important moment of my life because you had better things to do. They flinched. "We can't change the past," my father said, his voice rough with emotion. "But we want to try to do better, if you'll let us." I opened my drawer and pulled up 2 documents. I had my lawyer draft these. One is a repayment agreement, modest monthly payments over 10 years. The other is a relationship agreement. "A relationship agreement?" my mother asked. "Professional boundaries, personal boundaries, and expectations for our future relationship, including therapy, both individual and family sessions." They looked at the documents for a long time. "We'll sign," my father said finally. "But not because we have to, because we want to make things right." "Even the therapy part?" I asked, knowing how my father felt about counseling. He nodded. "Especially that part." 3 months later, the change was dramatic. My parents had settled into Aunt Sarah's guest house, keeping it immaculate and even helping with her garden. They'd stuck to their payment schedule, sending small but consistent amounts each month. Most importantly, they'd attended every therapy session. During one family dinner at my house, now a calm, pleasant affair, my mother brought out a surprise. "We found this in storage," she said, handing me a dusty folder. Inside were my childhood drawings, architectural sketches I'd made as a kid, dreams of buildings I wanted to design. "We should have encouraged this more," she said softly. "Instead of pushing you to support our lifestyle, we should have supported your dreams." "It's not too late," I replied. "I'm still designing buildings." "We know," my father said. We drove by your new project downtown. The community center. It's beautiful, son." For the first time in years, their praise felt genuine rather than manipulative. Later that evening, as they prepared to leave, to their own home, respecting my space, my father turned to me. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For not giving up on us completely. For giving us a chance to make things right. For being a better person than we taught you to be." I watched them drive away, feeling a complex mix of emotions. The past couldn't be erased, but perhaps it could be rebuilt like one of my architectural projects, taking damaged foundations and creating something stronger, more stable. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Left something on your desk. In my office, I found a new photograph in a simple frame. It showed the three of us at my latest project's groundbreaking ceremony, an event they'd actually attended, sober and supportive. Below it was a note: building a better future, one day at a time. Love, Mom and Dad. For the first time in years, those words felt real. Sometimes tough love and firm boundaries don't end relationships, they save them. And sometimes the hardest battles lead to the most meaningful victories.